Good morning, friends. My name is Kevin, and I'm the non-traditional Catholic, maybe ex-Catholic. It kind of depends on how you define your terms. But either way, I'll be your host for today's video. And today, I want to make a more informal and hopefully a little bit shorter video. Really just a response video because the Brian Holdsworth, rock icon and Catholic YouTuber extraordinaire, left a comment on one of my videos. This is wild because Brian is prolific in the Catholic YouTube space, and I have, at the time of this recording, 8 subscribers. So Brian Holdsworth leaving a comment on my video is a pretty big deal. I guess first I'll just start with Brian, thank you for taking the time to actually watch and then type out a response. That's, blowing my mind. Super grateful that you would actually take the time and do that. And then secondly, I thought I would just kind of offer a response. I want to go through your comment line by line and then just kind of give you my thoughts about it. But before we do that, though, I would just want to point out my homegirl Molly in the chair in that corner. I don't know if you can see her, but she's my homegirl. We hang out all day. If she comes over, I'll show you to the camera. But for now, I'm going to go ahead and switch over to the comment view so that we can read this together. So this is a comment on my video, an introduction to the Non-Traditional Catholic, and Brian says, "Thanks for sharing your story. You seem sincere, articulate, and well-educated in the traditions and schools of thought that reinforce the Catholic creed." So, Brian, thanks for starting off with such kind words. I think it's super easy when people hear a story like mine to kind of take it the wrong way. And I'm super happy that you, at least I don't think you took it the wrong way. Because I certainly never mean for any of my videos to be an attack on any current Catholics. I am not someone who thinks that anybody who remains a Catholic, even after I've explained my reasons why I'm not Catholic, is an idiot. I certainly do not think that. And your comments to me about my sincerity and my ability to be articulate means a lot to me. So just thank you for saying that. Brian goes on to say, "I'm a little stuck trying to understand how objecting to same-sex marriage led to your belief that Catholicism is wrong." So I will say, Brian, I didn't actually mean to imply that my objecting to same-sex marriage, or my non-objection perhaps to same-sex marriage, that didn't lead me to think that the church is false. So perhaps I stated it poorly, but I've pulled up the part of the video where I start to talk that, and I put on subtitles just to see if we can make it a little bit more understandable. But let's listen to what I said with gay marriage. I had a very close friend come out as gay, and up until that point, I never thought about it too much. I understood that the church had good reasons, or what I perceived as good reasons, for teaching that gay marriage was not licit. But when one of my friends came out, licit, L-I-C-I-T, not listed, but good work, YouTube. I decided to really look into it and dive into it and make sure that I understood why it was that the church taught what they taught. So I go on to say that I looked into teleology, and I discovered that the reason why the church said that gay marriage and just any non-procreative sex was wrong was because sex has 2 teloi, the first being procreation, the second being unity, and if anybody engages in any act that frustrates any of the teloi, that's a sin. I do find it odd that the church really only applies this to sex. Like, nobody talks about how chewing gum might be a sin, but regardless, that's neither here nor there. So, Brian, when you say I'm a little stuck trying to understand how my non-objection to same-sex marriage led me to believe that the church is wrong, that's not entirely correct. But I think where you are right is that gay marriage was the spark that lit the flame in me to really start investigating what the church teaches and why. But my non-objecting to gay marriage actually was not why I eventually came to the conclusion that the church was false. If I was convinced by teleology, if I was convinced that teleology really did exist and that the teloi of sex really was procreation and unity, and that it's always a sin to not satisfy teloi, then I would agree that gay sex is wrong, and that really wouldn't have like any impact on anything else. So it's certainly not that I think that the church is wrong because gay marriage is not immoral. It's just I don't believe that teloi actually exist. Brian goes on to say that he could understand that if I was a moral relativist. But if you're a moral relativist, you can't say that it's morally wrong to object to homosexuality unless you simply mean I don't like it. So I'm a moral anti-realist. So I actually try to just avoid words like moral, and I even try to avoid words like right and wrong, because I think that they mean essentially the same thing as moral. So what I might say is something like this. I think that it increases suffering overall to object to gay marriage. I don't think that there's any benefit to like a society banning gay marriage, or even discouraging gay marriage. I don't think there's any benefit, and I think that it increases suffering. So there's like a large drawback, and there's no benefit. Kind of like torturing babies. Torturing babies doesn't really benefit anybody, and it has a large drawback. So I think that they're both non-preferred, and I think that they both increase suffering. And I'll leave it there. I don't think I have to say more. I don't think I need to get into morality, which I don't think actually exists. But so that's that. Brian goes on to say, but if all you're saying is that you have no objective grounds to say that someone, or in this case the church, is wrong for believing otherwise. So again, here's that word wrong. I'm not going to use that word wrong. All I'm going to say is the church is increasing suffering by discouraging, or I guess the church bans gay marriage. So I'll stay away from the word wrong, but I'll say that the church is increasing suffering needlessly. Brian says, wouldn't it make more sense to say I stopped believing in Catholicism because I stopped believing in truth or goodness as something which transcends the content of my own thoughts and feelings? So you're getting closer here, Brian. And goodness, you may be onto something there. Depends on what you mean by goodness. But I certainly think that truth, and I suppose, what do you mean by transcends the content of my own thoughts and feelings? And so if by truth you just mean something which obtains in reality, and if by transcends the contents of my own thoughts, you just mean is true regardless of, whether I had thoughts about it or not, then I certainly do believe that things obtain regardless of whether I'm here or not. So it would obtain that water is, a single water molecule is two hydrogens and an oxygen. That is something which obtains. It's a fact about reality. And that would be true if I was never born, if I never existed, or, regardless. So if that's what you mean by believing in truth as something which transcends the content of my own thoughts and feelings, then I actually do believe that truth is something that transcends the contents of my thoughts. Goodness, though, that's a little weird. I will ask what you mean by goodness, because goodness can mean a lot of different things. In general, I try to avoid the words good and bad unless I'm using some kind of modifier, such as good at or good for. Something that is good at or good for one thing might be really bad for another thing. So my height, I'm 6'2", might be really good for reaching tall objects, but might be really bad for hiding in small holes. So I don't think that goodness with a capital G is something that transcends my own thoughts or feelings. Maybe goodness for reaching tall things is something that transcends my thoughts and feelings. But just goodness simpliciter, I don't actually know what that means. So I might ask you to clarify that. I'd love to have a whole conversation with you about this. We don't even have to record it. Obviously, I would love to record it, but yeah, I'd be interested to kind of figure out exactly what you're asking me, because the goodness thing, I'm not able to give you a satisfactory answer right now. Brian goes on, put another way, by saying that Catholicism must be wrong because of its stance on same-sex marriage, you're saying something about the Catholic Church and about same-sex marriage, which requires you to appeal to something objective, and you can't make those comparisons. So Brian is saying, if you are a moral anti-realist, or Brian says like a moral subjectivist, or relativist, I think he says, then you can't actually say that the church is wrong about condemning same-sex marriage. You're right. I won't say that the church is like immoral or wrong, if by wrong we mean immoral. I won't say that. I'm not a moral realist. But I think that the church is increasing suffering unnecessarily, and I want no part of that. I think that when most people say moral or wrong, they mean something like what I'm getting at. I just don't think that it exists in the same way that, the atoms that, make up the microphone that I'm speaking into exist. So, Brian goes on to say, but if this is just a question of your own subjective feelings, then your objection is with yourself and not with anything external like the church. Right. That would be the case if I was like a moral subjectivist. But I'm actually a moral anti-realist. And so I'm not trying to claim that the church is immoral for objecting to gay marriage. I'm simply trying to say that the church is increasing suffering by objecting to gay marriage, and I want no part of that. If moral judgments are only an assessment or declaration of our own subjective feelings, then we never have grounds to project moral judgments beyond ourselves. Completely agreed. And I actually think that when Catholics and other moral realists are making these moral judgments, I do think that they are actually just based on subjective feelings. Why should morality be something that comes from God or from the Bible or from the Catholic Church? Why should I care what God wants or doesn't want? It's still subjective. You're basing your morality upon God's opinion. So, I agree. And I'm not a moral realist. Simply because I don't think that you can prove that moral facts exist. I have no idea how you would even go about proving that moral facts exist. So that's that, Brian. I'm super honored that you would write to me. Super honored. You have, thousands of times more subscribers than I do. Me and my 8 subscribers are super honored that you would write to me. I wrote a response here, but I'm not sure that you'll see it, only because I have 8 subscribers. But I essentially just spoke what I wrote here, maybe a little bit more in depth. But hopefully that clears up some of your questions for me. I would absolutely love to talk to you about this more in depth sometime over whatever medium you decide, recorded or not recorded. Again, just super honored that you would talk to me, that you would write to me. And I can't wait to interact with you more next time. Thanks, everybody. I've been Kevin O'Connor, the non-traditional Catholic, maybe ex-Catholic. It depends on how you define the words. And until next time.